Great. So that lets us know that the webinar is now being recorded. So we're going to go ahead and move forward to the content. This is generally what our discussion with the next hour is going to look like. We just did or tried to do introductions. We're going to speak briefly about what NLAAD is for those partners that haven't joined calls before. We're going to briefly review some of the highlights from NLAAD 2015. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about the main webinar topic for today in our series of webinars, which will be HIV/AIDS amongst Hispanic Latinos and United States independent areas. And then we're going to close with some exciting things about NLAAD 2016, which we'll be announcing today to you all for the first time, which will include the theme for NLAAD this year. So before we get started, I want to go ahead and start the call off with the poll question, which you should see on your screen now. If this is your first time on the NLAAD network call, go ahead and click yes or no. This will kind of give us a better understanding of who's on the call with us. So this is great to see. We have about 80% of people on the call with us. This will be their first NLAAD call. So about 20 people responding yes. This is the first time they're attending an NLAAD network call. 6 saying no, which is great. This is a good number of people that were engaging for the first time. We have about 23 saying yes and about 9 saying no, so a total of 32 people out of the 47 who are on the webinar with us right now responding to the poll. So again, a good number of us are on the call, our network call for the first time, which really lets me know that the next section is going to be useful as far as information pertaining to NLAAD and who NLAAD really is and things like this. So great, thank you all for your responses. So briefly talking about what NLAAD is, or who we are. NLAAD, again, is National Latino AIDS Awareness Day. It takes place on the last day of Hispanic Heritage Month, which is October 15th. It was initiated back in 2003 by the Latino Commission on AIDS alongside a series of other national partners where we all came together to kind of solidify and raise awareness around HIV with Hispanic Latino populations throughout the country and territories. With that said, since then we've grown to what we call a network of partners, and a partner can be anyone that hosts an event in commemoration of NLAAD, whether it's tabling, whether it's testing, whether it's hanging a poster, whether it's doing a large-scale community fair, whether it's doing a race. Anyone that hosts an event for NLAAD in commemoration of National Latino AIDS Awareness Day, we consider an NLAAD partner. So on your screen here, you see a series of partners throughout the country that host different events, anything from cultural events to races to HIV testing to tabling. Again, any partner that does anything around NLAAD across the country, we consider part of our NLAAD network. So since then, there's a series. The theme for NLAAD changes every year, and with that, we have a series of new graphics where we really try to hone in on where along awareness the general population is, which you can imagine when we're talking about Latinos, Hispanics at a national scale can be pretty overwhelming, considering that the epidemic looks very different depending on where your region, state, or city might be. So in doing so, we try to be encompass a message that really addresses the needs of Latinos when it comes to awareness around HIV and AIDS at a national scale. As it stands now, we have about annually 200 or so partners that host events across the United States and territories. Last year we had an account of about 150 events throughout the country. And we'll speak a little more about that in a minute when we talk about highlights from 2015. So with that said, another poll question, has your organization organized an NLAAD event previously? So it's either yes, no, or you're not sure. So we have a majority, about 50 or so people on the call saying that they've hosted an NLAAD event before. We have about 8 people that aren't sure, and about 7 who say no. So great. It seems like we're engaging a good number of people that have hosted NLAAD events before, and also a good number of people that aren't sure, which would be great because now we can kind of engage you into potentially hosting an event for NLAAD. So kind of reviewing briefly what we highlighted from what we did in 2015. Again, We as a commission really do consider this a national effort that is inclusive of all our partners, and we really do make an effort to kind of engage our partners in how we should implement this campaign from year to year, and we do so by a series of things like, we do street intercept surveys throughout the country. We do partner surveys, so a lot of you might have completed an online partner survey, which really informs, again, the implementation of NLAAD from year to year, everything from these webinars to the messaging on the poster to Facebook ads and everything we do thereafter. So we really do try to take your guidance and input into account when it comes to designing a campaign that really speaks to your needs and the communities you serve. So there's three main things we usually try to address as a campaign, one of them being sustaining a national network of partners to ensure collaboration, cohesion, and having ongoing engagement of partners like yourselves. So in doing so, things like this, in which we kind of measured, is we had 148 unique registered partners last year, and these are part of what we do when we ask you to register yourself as a partner on the website. It enables you to kind of enter your event on our website, and two, it lets us know how well we're doing with engaging partners. So again, it's pretty important that we try to get you listed on our website as a partner, because it gives you credibility, some sort of acknowledgement as a partner that you're working at a national platform to kind of raise awareness around NLAAD, and it also gives you the credit that's due to you. And other ways in which we kind of engage our partners are through calls like this. So on your screen here, you'll see all the calls and webinars we had last year, of which we had a total of 302 total registrants. So we really do consider these calls specifically as a great engagement tool when it comes to spreading awareness around what NLAAD and kind of developing a platform for us to discuss things like these topics. The second thing we do is we try to develop and deliver resources to support NLAAD partners in the implementation of NLAAD. So we develop content and information that you find useful when it comes to organizing events and developing your own personal capacity to kind of work with certain populations when it comes to HIV/AIDS and Latinos. So through this, we did, we have a partnership with OraSure where we donate testing kits. Last year, we donated about 3,000 testing kits to partners that hosted events where they did testing, and those testing kits are free. So if you're hosting an event for National Latino AIDS Awareness Day and you're doing testing at that event, and you have a clear waiver to do these tests, you're eligible to receive testing kits for your NLAAD event. We also, for the first time ever, had a relationship and sponsorship with INSTI, where they donated 250 testing kits to 5 partners. We developed bilingual posters and messaging, where we mailed about 2,000 posters to 97 partners nationally. We developed 7 fact sheets, both in Spanish and English, that were available for partners to access on the website. And we had a live stream video discussion where we had a panelist of speakers and experts talking about engaging and retaining Hispanic Latinos in medical care. So that's kind of some of the things we do to kind of engage partners and build the capacity of our partners when it comes to meeting the needs of Latinos and HIV. On your screen now, you see what the poster and theme looked like for last year. So last year's theme was "You and I will defeat AIDS," or in Spanish, "Tú y yo vamos a derrotar al SIDA," which kind of under that had then highlighted different individual level actions around the continuum of care that individuals can take to address, to ultimately reach an end to AIDS. And we'll talk a little bit more about the poster and what that poster will look like along with the theme this year in a minute. And then finally, the third step, which I think is kind of where it really matters that we kind of put ourselves out there to the general community, is we try to market NLAAD to community members to drive event attendance and or testing. So we try to do things as a commission to really raise awareness amongst the Latino population, beyond just working with community partners. So the way in which we do this was last year we aired a 60-second PSA, which aired on 250 radio stations, Spanish radio stations, which had a reach of about 11.5 million Latino listeners throughout the course of that week. Another thing we did was for the second time, we did a series of Facebook ads which were segmented for specific populations, which had impressions of about 2 million. And lastly, we had, for the first time, we did Pandora ads, and we tested it out by doing a 15-second Pandora ad in New York City. And I'll kind of speak to what those look like in a minute. That radio ad in Spanish is this one right here. I'm going to see if it plays. Hopefully it does.
Celebramos la herencia hispana con muchos eventos llenos de música, comida y sabor.
Pero también celebremos la vida al derrotar el SIDA.
¿A poco todavía es un problema?
Claro, afortunadamente si se detecta y se trata el VIH temprano, se puede vivir una vida larga y saludable con tratamiento y consultas al médico regularmente. Pero tenemos que actuar al hablar sobre el VIH, su prevención y su tratamiento para crear un mundo donde el VIH no se convierta en SIDA.
Este 15 de octubre es el Día Nacional Latino para la concientización del SIDA. Visita NLAAD.org para encontrar un evento cerca de ti o donde puedes hacer la prueba de forma gratuita.
Todos tenemos la responsabilidad de prevenir la propagación del VIH.
¿Y el SIDA?
Tú y yo
Vamos a derrotar al SIDA. Un mensaje del Día Nacional Latino para la concientización del SIDA.
So again, these were aired on 250 Spanish radio stations throughout the country. They're about a minute long. It's specifically targeting Spanish-speaking Latinos. And again, the main purpose around us doing things like this is to kind of drive traffic to the website where you would have your event listed. So ultimately, it'd be to your benefit as a partner to make sure your information is listed on the website, because all this stuff is channeling traffic to the website where your information would be posted. And we also have oftentimes have media contact us asking us for information about events locally. And if there's times in which we really don't have anyone to direct them to in certain locations because even though we know partners are hosting events there, because those events aren't registered on the website. So again, we really do encourage you to enter your event information, register on the website when that website is up and live. So like I mentioned, another thing we did were Facebook ads, and those Facebook ads were segmented based on YMSM youth, older men, trans women, and youth in general. And they were both in Spanish and English, and this is what the ads look like. And they were targeted, meaning that you would only see an ad based on whether you fit that particular segment. And this is what those ads look like once they were on Facebook. They would either be on your feed or on the side panel, and that's kind of what they look like. So it was really about, again, engaging community members and driving traffic to the website, as well as garnering likes on our Facebook page. And like I said, we also had Pandora ads for the first time, and it was specifically engaging English-speaking or bilingual Hispanic Latinos in New York City in the 5 boroughs. And again, for those of you that have done or heard ads on Pandora, they're usually very short. So again, this is a lot shorter. It's 15 seconds, and it's used to drive traffic to the website, and this is what it sounds like. This is what it was. It's 15 seconds.
October 15th is National Latino AIDS Awareness Day. HIV negative or positive. Everyone plays a role in our community. Being healthy. You and I will defeat AIDS. Tú y yo vamos a derrotar al SIDA. Click the banner for more info.
Great. So again, it was very short and sweet. It was kind of came up on your screen if you were Latino in the 5 boroughs in New York City, whether you were Spanish speaking or bilingual. So again, all of what we do is very much targeted to Latinos, very targeted to specific segments, and messages are crafted specific to the segments they're used to engage. Whether it's Spanish speaking, English speaking, and it's given mediums. And again, part of what we do is we host a press conference trying to, even though we're all about engaging and using new media, we also understand the value of traditional media, which is why we frequently put out press releases and try to engage media when it comes to National Latino AIDS Awareness Day. So we had a large number, more than we've ever seen before, on coverage. So we do media citations where we try to track how well we did as far as engaging traditional media. And last year was the most amount of media engagement we've had on traditional media than ever before. And that's inclusive of newspaper, magazine, online blogs, and just general media coverage online on TV. So again, all of that has to do in large part with the collaboration efforts that we all put in together nationally. So I thank you all as partners for the work that you do and the collaboration that we continue to hold in making NLAAD a successful campaign from year to year. So I'm going to try to unmute the lines quickly to see if hopefully our fun music in the background is gone, and see if anyone has any questions.
The conference has been unmuted.
Cool, it sounds like the music's gone. So the lines are currently all unmuted. If anyone has any questions about that before we move on, I'd be more than happy to answer those questions now. Any questions or comments about NLAAD? Pretty quiet group. Great. I'm guessing everyone's just really excited about hearing the content we have to present in a minute. I had someone ask us just now whether we'd be sharing the slides. We will. We'll be sending them out in PDF format after the webinar is over, and it'll also be recorded, so it will be on our NLAAD YouTube channel. So again, if there's any questions you have throughout the course of the webinar in the next section where we're talking about HIV/AIDS among Latino Hispanics in the U.S. independent areas, you're more than welcome to do that in the chat function. Putting the call back on mute.
The conference has been muted.
So a precursor I want to make is that we're kind of talking about HIV at a national scale. And oftentimes we get so used to hearing verbiage around what HIV looks like at a national scale that we don't oftentimes realize that HIV looks very different sometimes locally. So I do want to say that, you know, I encourage you to look at what your epi data and surveillance looks like at a local scale and see if in any way it mirrors what we're seeing nationally, which it can, and sometimes it might not. And all this data is collected from the latest surveillance report released by CDC. From data including 2014, and that's volume 26. So we adapted this information directly from that surveillance report. So with that said, at the end of 2013, about 209,000 Hispanic Latinos of any race were living with a diagnosed HIV infection in the United States and six dependent areas, which were inclusive of Puerto Rico. So what I'm going to talk about first here is strictly prevalence, meaning the number of people living with HIV, given a given time frame. So at the end of 2013, we saw that if we're purely looking at just adults and adolescents, there were about 164,000 male Latinos and about 44,000 females, adults and adolescents. So when we're talking about adults and adolescents, that's anyone the age of 13 and over. When we're looking at younger than 13, this is what it looks like. A large number of them are still Latinos that were living at the end of 2003 were infected from perinatal transmission, and about 7% were other. So again, this is the number of Latinos living with HIV at the end of 2013. If we're looking at the number of Latinos living with HIV and we're considering age, this is what the age distribution looks like. So majority of Latinos living with HIV at the end of 2013, the largest bracket was between the ages of 45 and 49. And again, when we're talking about prevalence and the number of Latinos living with HIV, as time progresses, we're seeing a larger number beyond this age bracket, which is great to see because, again, it lets us know that certain levels of treatment and engagement and care are working because we're able to live longer with HIV, which is key, which is what we want to continue to see. So again, these are just prevalence numbers. We'll be talking about new diagnosis in a minute. So now we're looking at, on your screen is a graph of the top 10 states and areas at the end of 2013 where there were adults and adolescents, Hispanic Latinos living with a diagnosed HIV infection. So this very much mirrors what we saw at the end of the last year's data, which was at the end of 2012. The top 10 states are still the same. So at the top, we have New York City, followed by California, Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico, New Jersey, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Arizona. And right here, we're purely looking at frequency, meaning just the numbers. We're not even accounting for the population sizes yet, which we'll do more so in a minute when we talk about new diagnosis. So these are the top 10 states with the number of Latinos living with an HIV diagnosis at the end of 2013. What I'm going to talk about now is newly diagnosed, for people that were diagnosed in 2014, right? So here on your screen, you see diagnosis of HIV infection by race in 2014, and this is inclusive of both the United States and 6 dependent areas. When we say the dependent areas, we're talking about Puerto Rico, Guam, the Virgin Islands, and so on. So we have the races listed here. Latinos accounted for about 24% of new diagnosis in 2014, which is about 1 in 4, and the total number being 10,887. Carlos Harris has asked if we have numbers for North Carolina or South Carolina. Again, we're talking about HIV at a national scale, and I purely just mentioned those numbers because those are the top 10 grossing numbers of cases of people Latinos living with HIV in those states. Those numbers for South Carolina definitely exist. If you want to find those out, I can definitely shoot those to you after the call, Carlos, so don't hesitate to shoot me an email, and I can let you know what those numbers look like. What we have here is the distribution of diagnosis in 2014 by age. So again, this is different from the graph I showed earlier because These are new diagnoses in 2014. Again, the highest peak number here we saw the most number of Latinos being diagnosed between the ages of 25 and 29. And there's a major jump between 19 to 20, right? So that's something interesting to see here, that there's a major jump between these numbers here. I'm not really going to focus on any stipulations on why this is happening. I'm purely just presenting the numbers. A lot of the causes we'll have after this will focus on things like social determinants of health, which will cover some of those things that might be raising eyebrows. When we're looking at male versus female and transmission categories, this is what we see here. So this graph is, I try to find an innovative way to kind of present this information. The stuff in orange, the area in orange are males. The area in this teal or blue color are female. And the areas are proportionate to the percentage of those that were diagnosed in 2014 are Hispanic Latino by age and transmission category. So you see a large number of Latinos that were diagnosed, reported transmission being male-to-male sexual contact, which was a total of 7,893. The second largest one being heterosexual contact amongst females, followed by heterosexual contact amongst males. And there's a small little slither here that's not really shown on your screen, but there's an other category. And for males, that's a total number of 11, and females, that little slither right here, is about 11. So again, the total number of new diagnosed Latinos across the United States in 6 dependent areas in the United States, and again, 6 dependent areas, was about 10,969. When we're talking purely about adults and adolescents, not accounting for 13 and under. There's a major difference when it comes to countries of origin or place of birth when it comes to Latinos and being diagnosed. So in 2014, when we looked at Hispanics that were diagnosed with HIV in 2014, and we looked at that the highest number of Latinos that were diagnosed were born in the U.S., about 39%, followed by those Latinos that were born in Mexico that live in the U.S. now, then Puerto Rico, Central America, South America, and then Cuba, and finally other or unknown is about 22%. So there's major differences when it comes to place of birth that we saw when it comes to working with diagnosis amongst Latinos and Hispanics in the U.S. If you wanted to look at it by region, there's also major differences as far as diagnoses go by region. And this is again looking at frequencies, meaning the number of Latinos that were diagnosed in 2014 based on their region of residence. The highest number was the South. So there were 4,997 Latinos that were diagnosed in the South in 2014. The second largest number were in the West, with 3,234, followed by the Northeast with 2,190, then 687 in the U.S. dependent areas, and then the Midwest with 680. So that's kind of what the distribution looks like when we're looking specifically at regions. One thing to account for, though, is this is where we're going to start talking about rates. And the reason why it's important to look at rates oftentimes is because when we're just looking at raw numbers or frequencies like these, we don't really know what that population size in those regions look like. So it could be that, 4,097 people, Latinos, were diagnosed in the South, but and I'm just giving this case, what if there's 5,000 Latinos in the South? And again, this is not the case, but if there were, we'd see that it'd be more urgent to focus on the South versus if there were a larger population size. So again, considering the population size is key, because this lets us know the urgency of diagnosis in those areas when we consider population size. So what I'm going to show you here is an overlay, and we removed Puerto Rico here, the dependent areas, because when it comes to reporting rates, that isn't collected or it's not really reported when it's inclusive of the dependent areas. So here it's purely just the rates and the count of diagnosed HIV infection amongst Hispanics by region of residence in 2014. So and these dots here, those are the rates of diagnosis in those regions, which again, those account for the size of the population in those regions. So you start to see here why it's important to consider rates when we're talking about diagnosis, because it really can paint a very different picture. The rates are actually highest in the Northeast, even though the number is lower, right? So, and again, the rate is highest in the Northeast, followed by the South. Then we see the West, and then finally the Midwest being fourth. So again, looking at rates of diagnosis between 2010 and 2014, here we're doing a comparison of rates between other races. So what we've generally seen from 2010 and 2014 is there's a general decline of rates of diagnosis with other races and ethnicities, which is great to see. When we're looking at Hispanics and Latinos, which is the purple line right here, we're seeing that it's generally stable. From 2010 and 2014, if anything, it's increased a little bit. It seems to have dropped down a bit between 2011 and 2013, and then we saw a bounce back in 2014. So again, accounting for the size of the population is key when we're talking about new diagnosis, and in certain areas when you're looking at incidence, it's really key to consider the size of the population we're working with, alongside what those actual numbers look like, so the frequencies and also the rates. With that said, we're all talking about the continuum of care. It's pretty much changed the way in which we do our work, ensuring that we diagnose people we test people. We do targeted testing and test people to make sure people know their status. So as it stands now, there's about 85% of Hispanic Latinos, and this continuum of care on the screen here specifically on Hispanic Latino adults and adolescents living with an HIV infection in the United States and Puerto Rico at the end of 2012. So there's a general delay of reporting when it comes to numbers like this. So here we have data from 2012 because it's the latest information we're to capture, or we can see this information overlaid the way it is now. So when we're talking about Hispanics and Latinos across the United States and Puerto Rico, at the end of 2012, we saw that about 85% of them were diagnosed, meaning they knew they were positive. They're aware of their sero status, their positive status, their infection. About 35.3% of them received medical care. 33% of them were prescribed antiretroviral therapies, and around 27% reached viral suppression, meaning that they were on regular medical treatment to a point where the virus is no longer detectable within their body, which then thereafter reduces the likelihood of transmission at a great rate. So again, this is what the treatment cascade looks like for Latinos at the end of 2012. Let us know there's a lot of work for us to do between the diagnosis and engaging people in Latinos in regular medical care. There's a good, small number of drop down between received medical care and prescribed, which is great. I think this lets us know that once we engage Latinos in regular medical care, getting them prescribed antiretroviral therapies and getting them engaged into treatment and taking treatment regularly is we're doing well with that. And ultimately, again, working on making sure that we reach viral suppression is another one of our key outcomes at a national scale. What we do every year is we try to find easy ways to digest this information. So back 2 years ago, we started developing these fact sheets with infographics that look something like this, and this is somewhat of a sneak peek of what one of the fact sheets will look like. And this is a general one that was produced by our graphics team so far this past week. And we developed a series of other fact sheets. So we do fact sheets on HIV/AIDS among Hispanic, Latino, MSM, women, youth. We have one for the first time we're developing this year on trans Latina women. We're developing one on older Hispanic Latino adults in HIV. So there's a total of 7 fact sheets that are both in Spanish and English that we developed for your use and distribution that will be available on the website. So that's pretty much the end of the topic where we talked about HIV/AIDS amongst Hispanics, Latinos in the United States independent areas. Again, these slides will be available to you after the call. What I'm going to do quickly is unmute the lines in case anyone has any questions.
The conference has been unmuted. The conference has been muted.
I'm sorry, guys. I really don't know where that noise is coming from. So that was our brief presentation on HIV amongst Hispanics, Latinos in the United States independent areas. All these slides will be available to you at the end of the call, and you're more than welcome to use them in any way you see fit. If you'd like for me in any capacity to do some sort of webinar specifically to your planning council or something like this, I'm more than able to do that. You just gotta let me know what that looks like. And there's a process we have in-house to do what we call capacity building. So we're more than able to do stuff like that with you, and I'm more than happy to do that. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to enter them in the chat box. If not, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with some of the announcements for NLAAD 2016. I don't think, again, Carlos, you had asked a question about whether we have numbers for the South. If you haven't visited, one of my favorite online tools for partners to recommend partners to use when it comes to looking at surveillance data in a very graphic, easy to digest format, it's going to aidsview.org. So if you haven't been to aidsview.org, they have up-to-date 2014 surveillance data uploaded on their website, and you can look at everything from a national to state to county to city, and you can segment even by race, age, and transmission category. And you have both prevalence and new diagnosis data. And again, that website is AIDSView. It's AIDSVU.org. Great. So that's that, and that's a plug for AIDSView and kind of the resources we have available for you afterwards. So moving forward with NLAAD 2016 announcements, there are a couple. I'm going to do we're going to announce the theme right now, but there's other small changes that we're doing that I think in my eyes are pretty big. For those of you that are familiar with the logo that we've had since the beginning of NLAAD, it looks like this. We've gotten some feedback from partners, from the survey, from just general partners asking us to kind of see if we had something that was a little different from this. So we've decided to kind of give our logo a new look. And if you've noticed, generally, when we look at logos at a commercial marketing perspective, they don't do drastic changes with their logo. If you think of Apple, it went from a color apple, where they have apple on the bottom of it, to a monochromatic, just plain, no color, where they remove the apple with the apple text. So keeping that in mind, we didn't really want to deviate from our logo too much. We want to make sure that we had ties to what the logo looked like before. And this is what our new logo looks like. So you can tell the font's a little newer. It's not that same type of Arial Sans type of logo font. We've changed we removed the text altogether, so we no longer have National Latino AIDS Awareness Day, Día Nacional sobre la Concepción del SIDA on the bottom of the logo. Now it's just plain NLAAD with the sun. I think the sun is something that really speaks to what our brand is, and something we wanted to make sure that we keep with the new logo as well. And that's what the logo looks like. So we hope you like it. There were several iterations of it. We got feedback from partners, and this is the one that was decided on. So I think we're very excited about it, and we're excited to be sharing with you guys afterwards. Another change we've done to NLAAD this year is we're kind of changing our name. It's still going to be NLAAD, but for those of you that might have heard about this, is that there's a movement that's been going on for a while about Latinx, right? So part of what Latinx is kind of a way to kind of address gender nonconforming communities that might be part of the populations we oftentimes work with. And I think a great way of which Latinx is oftentimes described, and it's funny because oftentimes we hear, oh, is that a typo? It's not a typo. It's intentionally an X. And I think this quote from Christina Alicia, I think really encompasses well what Latinx really means. In her quote, and I'll read it here directly, is, to me, identifying as Latinx is embracing the intersections between cultural identity and gender. It's about inclusiveness, making sure everyone is accounted for. Spanish in particular is a heavily gendered language. Everything is male or female. So what about our non-binary trans people? We love our culture and want to be included too. I identify as Latinx to assure everyone's voice is heard. So for those of us that are fluent in Spanish, we know that Spanish can sometimes be a very gendered language, like Christina said here in her quote. So we wanted to make sure that we found some way to be inclusive of this movement, identifying that we work with populations that don't oftentimes identify as male or female, and I understand that gender sometimes is a spectrum, right? It's not always black or white. So we're excited to kind of make this change and be more inclusive of our intersections of gender and Latinos. So that's another change we've kind of done, and that is it's National Latinx AIDS Awareness Day. So now I'm going to go ahead and talk about this year's theme. The process in which we kind of undergo to select a theme from year to year, again, is based on the feedback we get from partners from the survey. We do street intercept surveys to make sure whether the theme resonates with local community members. Another thing in which we do, and we've done this the last couple years, 4 or 5 years, actually 3 or 4 years, is we initiated a National Latino AIDS Awareness Day Council. Since the initiation of the campaign has grown at a large scale, which makes it, you can imagine, very difficult to retain that grassroots feel of this campaign. So a way we kind of addressed that was by developing a national CAD, or an advisory board, of leaders that have worked with NLAAD for several years since its initiation, and we solicit their feedback and guidance. So along all those measures, we collect this information and try to formulate a theme that really speaks to what's going on with HIV/AIDS and awareness at a national scale. And again, something we want to make sure we retain is we want to have some level of consistency from year to year when it comes to the theme. So some type from the previous year to the new theme. We want to make sure that based on feedback, people continue to like to see posters of images of people, real people on the posters, which is something we'll continue to do this year. We wanted to make sure that we showcase the racial diversity of Latinos. Latinos can pretty much look like anything racially, so we want to make sure that we embrace that in our imagery and posters. And alongside that, we also wanted to make sure that we continue to showcase individual level actions that people can take to ultimately reach what the theme showcased. So last year's theme was "You and I will defeat AIDS," or in Spanish was "Tú y yo vamos a derrotar al SIDA." And the individual level actions were things like, I will get tested for HIV, I will not be ashamed to talk about HIV, I will ask about the pill that prevents HIV, kind of alluding to PrEP, I will maintain my medical care and treatment. We got a lot of feedback ranging from there's too many words on the screen to too much text. So we're trying to find ways to kind of take all the feedback, give it back to the Leadership Council, and kind of develop something that kind of would speak to what we're seeing that's needed. So this year what we decided to do is we're going to have one poster that's going to be in both Spanish and English. We're not going to say it's a bilingual poster because we're not translating everything from Spanish to English or vice versa. It's going to have both Spanish and English in the poster. So I like to say it's more Spanglish than bilingual. So with that said, we really wanted to find a word or a phrase that if someone were to see a poster and it were one poster, they would be able to identify that it's specifically speaking to Latinos, Hispanics. So we're thinking of key phrases that are oftentimes used in the populations, the communities we work with our cultura. And one of those key phrases that we came upon was con ganas. And con ganas is oftentimes, if you're Hispanic or Latino, it's a phrase you might have heard your mother, your grandmother, or you yourself might be saying it frequently. And it means it's a Spanish phrase used to describe having enough desire to act, right? So, haz algo con ganas, or you know, con ganas, like having that desire and motivation to do some sort of action. So what we did is we took this phrase, con ganas, and ganas purely means desire or motivation. And we integrated it into last year's theme, where we're doing this Spanish-English theme that's inclusive of con ganas, which is we'll defeat AIDS con ganas, right? So you can kind of see there's an evolution of the theme from last year, where we have defeat AIDS. We still kind of retain this communalistic effort. It's not individual level action. It's not a group. You know, it's an individual within a community that will kind of ensure that we defeat AIDS. So that's still retained in this year's theme with the wheel. So you start seeing that how if you were to see a poster with this phrase on there, you'll automatically be attuned to understanding that specifically speaking to a Latino population. So this year's theme, we're excited about it after all the work we put into it. is we'll defeat AIDS con ganas. So with that said, we also have, like last year, a series of individual level actions. And the individual level actions, the theme is tied to prompts to those. So we're keeping this idea of desire to act, having enough desire to act in the individual level actions too. And the 3 individual level actions, again, this is not all encompassing of what an individual can do. They're purely selected based on topics that community members and also partners wanted to make sure we had listed on the poster. But there's a series of other things that could have been listed, right? Like, I use a condom con ganas, or hablo sobre el PrEP con ganas, right? Or hablo con mi doctor sobre el VIH con ganas, right? So all we wanted to do is select things that were really suggested by our partners, but also topics that I think would be continue to be useful for the general community to be engaged in. So again, they're both in Spanish and English. The first one is I get tested con ganas. The second one, which is in Spanish, mantengo mi tratamiento con ganas. So again, we're speaking to an HIV positive contingent of our population. And we're now saying I take PrEP con ganas. So even though we mentioned PrEP last year as a pill, and again, we understand that PrEP is a strategy, not just the medication itself. The reason why we worded this way last year was we staged the community at a level where a lot of Latinos didn't know what PrEP was. So even if we would have said PrEP, people wouldn't have known what it was, which is why we took a step back and worked more about raising awareness of PrEP, which is why we stated it the way it was when we're purely speaking about the pill itself, not necessarily the strategy. So in this year, we changed that and went directly to just naming it PrEP. So I take PrEP con ganas, mantengo mi tratamiento con ganas, and I get tested con ganas. So these are the 3 action items that will be showcased on the poster. The poster will be showcased in the next 2 weeks. And the poster you're able to order, it's completely free. We ship it to you, and you're able to order that on the website once the website goes live. So again, you'll be able to order posters, enter your event information, and also access the fact sheets and other resources on the NLAAD website. Right now, the website's still the previous one from last year, from 2015. The 2016 website will be going live in the middle of August, which would give us sufficient time to take orders, enter event information, and also get those things to you in time for your NLAAD events. So with that said, we're very excited to have announced this year's theme, We'll Defeat AIDS con ganas, which is something I think really speaks to our community. And I'm going to see, hopefully, the lines can be unmuted without that background noise. I'm going to give it a try just to see if we can kind of get dialogue going.
The conference has been unmuted.
Perfect, the noise is gone. So are there any questions or feedback about anything we talked about so far, or just any general feedback or commentary or questions?
I have a question. This is Adriana from Houston.
Hey, Adriana.
Hi. Will we be able to add our logos and like the information of maybe testing event or education information on those? Yeah,
Adriana, so definitely. So it's not shown on this poster because it's a poster we usually use not for events but for like when we do posts like print them large scale. But generally, you'll see there's an area somewhere around here.
Okay.
Where you enter your event information. So that's still the case, and that was the case for posters last year too. So that's definitely something we're retaining, and something we definitely conversations when it comes to our graphic artists and team on staff.
I think the only thing that I struggled with, and that was just actually inserting our logo or logos that maybe we were working with other agencies. Just to show that, who's going to be out there. So I don't know if maybe that's something that you can get back with the graphics team or...
So I wish we had the capacity to kind of customize posters with everyone's logo, like customized for each organizing partner's logo on it. The reason why it's a little difficult for us to do that is that there's over 150 partners that usually host events. So it just wouldn't be, we don't have the capacity to do that. What I've seen other partners do, and I can talk to you about off the line about how you can potentially do this, is we've shipped the posters, and partners then actually put the poster into their own printers and do the layout so that the logos are printed on the posters themselves on their end.
I was just, and only because I had utilized like World Hepatitis Day, so they allowed us to insert like through a JPEG, but that's okay.
No. So what you're saying here is actually right. So if I was talking about if we mail the posters to you. So you can also download the poster online. And when you download the poster online, you download it as a PDF, and in that case, you can enter your event information when you're typing it, and also include your logos there.
Okay.
Great. Thanks for that question. That was great. Any other questions or comments about anything so far? No, I saw Maria Lugo asked a question about where you would place the order. Again, you would place orders on the website. The website still, we're working on updating the website for 2016, so the website still isn't functional for orders yet. The website for this year will go live in the middle of August. So if you received an invite or you registered for this, we're going to go and add you to our mailing list so you get regular updates around when the website goes live and things like this. Great. So we're just about 2 minutes shy of 3 o'clock. Our next call will be on Tuesday, August 30th. At this exact same time, we'll present a series of other NLAAD updates. On that call, I would like to have partners kind of speak about what they're doing locally. So what we want to start doing is kind of showcasing what partners are doing for NLAAD. So if you want to kind of do a mini 30-second spiel, introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing for NLAAD locally, shoot me an email. I would love to have you kind of present what you're doing and kind of show it off. I mean, you should be proud of the work that you're doing locally. So shoot me an email if you're interested in kind of speaking about what you're doing for NLAAD this year, and we'll give you 30 seconds to kind of do that. And the more number of partners that kind of do that, the better. I think that, sharing each other's ideas is kind of what drives innovative work and collaboration. So we do encourage you to kind of reach out to us and present what you're doing. So yeah, that's going to be our topic next on the next call, which will be competency, humility, and responsiveness of working with Latinx and Latino MSM. And it will be presented by one of our colleagues. If you don't have my contact information, it's right here. If there's anything you need pertaining to NLAAD, I'll be your point of contact. Don't hesitate to shoot me an email. Email is generally the best way to reach me. I'll be out of the office on travel quite a bit the next week or so. So I'm pretty quick to respond to email, even if I'm not in the office. And you can reach me by tochoa@latinoaid. Great. So, and then I just saw David Flores ask, are there any events that NLAAD is coordinated, leading, and the organizations to participate in? For instance, if they're doing anything in LA, would be able to be a community partner. So I'm glad you're asking that question, David, because that question is oftentimes something that we get asked a lot. So I have a list of partners that we've had from the previous year. So another reason why it's beneficial to kind of be on this call is that you can kind of hear who's on the calls with you. If someone presents that they're doing an event locally and they're in your same area, I can put you in contact with them to see if there's areas of collaboration. And also, if you start entering your event or registering on the website, I can see who's interested in hosting an event, and I can start linking partners together based on where their geographic locations are. So again, I really suggest that partners register on the website because it really fuels collaboration, and it really helps with linking partners locally and building a stronger, cohesive network. That's it, everyone. It's 3 o'clock. We've sped through the content. I'll be sending the webinar recording and the slides out afterwards. And I thank you for all the work that you're doing in your collaboration. So don't hesitate to shoot me an email or give me a call if anything comes up. Thank you all, and we'll be in touch.